And we tried to get information out, and they couldn't. So we went around to try and find out where they were from. You talked to people in town. They didn't know anything. So there were a couple of orphanages nearby. So we went to look for them. Both orphanages were hit during the night in the bombing raid. So there was nothing there to find anything. So that's the way we had them. We had them for a couple of nights in our barracks, keep them asleep.
There were 2 orphanages that were bombed in an
They
air
were
raid?
both bombed, cleaned right out, all burned out. There was nothing there. But we were looking around to see if we could find clothes or something to know for us. We couldn't find nothing there. Everything was burned right out. And the only thing we could have figured is that they must have walked out during the bombing raid and walked through the woods. I don't know how they did it. They were picking flowers in the woods. There was nothing bothering them. They wanted to give us these flowers they were picking.
Where did they end up? Where did they end up?
Well, they ended up dead. That's what happened. We had a girl I had picked up in town one time. She was a shell shock case. I didn't know that. The girl was looking in the windows. I'm talking to her. I would think maybe she wanted to get something to eat or something. She didn't talk to me. Somebody finally told me. She was shell shocked. She couldn't talk. She could just make a noise. She couldn't talk.
Oh.
So we had her taking care of the kids, and we had them in town, different places, people trying to keep them that way. So when they were going to make the French had told us they were going to make a sneak landing in England. They didn't know where they were going to come in, so we had to go look for them. Mm-hmm. So what had happened, one of the guys were in town, we're supposed to be working, the guy's in town, he's with the kids. So he told me the kids were in town there, and that's where he was. So then I just left and went to see them. They were watching a tennis game. They call lawn tennis. They just bat the ball back and forth on the lawn. Mm-hmm. So I was with them maybe an hour, and I come back and I found out we had to move. Everybody's going to go down along the coast looking for these landing parties. Mm-hmm. And so to come up with this idea was take them to Petworth. Now nobody under 80 was allowed in Petworth, the town of Petworth. We're all only people. So we figured it'd be safe that way, put them in a town where nobody else was under 80 in there. Mm-hmm. And that's where we took them that way. Put them there, and then we went down the coast and looking for landing parties. While we're down the coast looking, they had made a landing, and that's where they landed, in Petworth. They came right in Petworth.
The French?
The Germans came in.
Germans made a landing?
Well, there was an advance landing party. They were going to come in, and they had this advance party come in. And then they had troops. We had troops get there to catch them and all, but that didn't help us any. We got back. So when we come back to Petworth, they tried to find out where they were and all. And the guys went back to our camp. I got off and I walked in a tent. The guy said, he's a commanding officer. He's questioning German prisoners. So I went and I asked him, I said, what happened to him? And he kept giving me this, well, it's war, you know. I gave war. Goes, it's war, you know. And I asked him, I said, what happened to the kids? What happened to the people? They had killed everybody. They killed all the people. Mm. And all people couldn't get around their own. They're all over 80 or 100 years old or so. They're walking on canes, and then these little kids. So they killed them all. So we was talking to them, and I looked at the 2 guards. We had machetes, standing there with machetes. They were in the back. They were guarding him. I looked at him and he said, what war? I just reached over, took the machete from the one guy's hand. I just went right down the front of the guy. I just belly right off. And the machete back. He looked at me and fell. This officer gets up behind the desk and looks like he's got a dead man in front of me. I thought these guys are going to start yelling and stuff. I walked out slow. Nobody said a thing. Nobody yelled at me. I walked out past the 2 guards at the front of the tent, walked down the street. Nobody yelled anything. Walked all the way back to the road to go back to my own camp. Mm-hmm. Nobody ever yelled at us, just like that.
I can see why you were disgusted. I mean, those kids weren't hurting anybody, and the elderly, what are they going to do if they were all over 80 years of age?
Sure, it had to be over 80, you know, to be there. And they couldn't hardly get around. They were nice people, though. We talked to them, but they just, like people 90 or so, how to get around, though.
Well, there were some heartbreaker stories come out of that war. Man, that's rough.
Went back to camp, and they told us they knew they were going to make a landing. As I said, the Germans didn't know they had caught the advance party. They were contacting the Germans all the time, and the Germans didn't know anything about us. So I ended up, I'm supposed to do a guard duty along the road. So we go up this road towards where the town there. They told, don't walk, don't move around, don't smoke, no noise. I'm there by myself. I'm not going to talk or smoke or anything. So then I'm standing there, and then you see this plane come over. You could hear the little plane. You couldn't see it. The fog was blowing in. Then all once you could see, he dropped flares. Then you could smell it. They had sank oil barges in where they were coming in. And then the plane went over and dropped flares on them and just fried them right. But people were way in, the Germans were way in, they burned them. They were shooting them as they came in. Bring them. And then I'm just standing there waiting and taking the prisoners down. Finally, the guy come by. He said, you take these two. He said, you aren't needed here anymore. So I started, and the one guy had his arm blown right off. So I told the guy, pick this guy up. I said, you know what I'm talking. If they came up, and he'd point to show it, 9, 9. So I shot him in the back. That's the way you